All right. It is the top of the hour, and I want to respect your time. Um, my name is Jamie Purnell, and I'm an e-learning tech here with Wake Tech, and we are going to begin the workshop today. This is Building Structure in Blackboard Ultra. Thanks so much for joining us. And I want to just go over today's agenda and also make you aware of a few other things as we are having Blackboard Ultra Experience Week here at Wake Tech as we prepare to transition in the fall of 2024 toward all courses being in Blackboard Ultra. First of all, if you happen to have an Ultra Dev Shell already assigned to you, we will be doing probably for about at least half to maybe 3/4 of the workshop will be demonstration. So if you want to have your own Ultra Dev Shell and go over some of these procedures, yourself as we are going over them, if you would prefer not to do that, that's also perfectly acceptable. And so let's talk a little bit about what exactly we're going to be doing today. So first of all, we're just going to give you a quick tour of the Ultra interface. And you may find that it's a little bit different from Blackboard Original. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to build content. And after that, we're going to get into the course demo portion of the workshop, in which we're going to talk about how to copy content in from another course, talk about the flexibility of the new item that's referred to as a document, and then we're going to talk about very lightly touch, because there's another workshop on this, there's a whole workshop on it, but we may talk a little bit about how to access content market items. And then the main crux of what we're going to be demonstrating is to be talking about how do you build structure in your course. And what that means is there are two major tools at your disposal, which were available in Original, but they look and behave very differently in the Ultra environment. And that would be learning modules versus folders. I'm very excited about the new environment and the whole Ultra interface. And I think once you start to see this and start to get your hands on it and use it on a regular basis, I think you're going to also be just as excited as I am. So as we go through all of the items on our agenda, I want to let you know that Mary Walton will be my partner in crime here, and she's going to be watching the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to place them in the chat, and she will find the appropriate moment to refer the question to me, and I'll try to answer it as best that I can. All right, so any questions on how things are going to go before we get started? Okay, just one more question, just to get a feel for things. Has anybody either been part of one of the Blackboard Ultra pilots, or have you been issued an Ultra Dev Shell that you've maybe played around with? You can either raise your hand or use one of the emojis, is fine, either one. Oh, okay, so I see that we have a little bit of familiarity here. That's good. Okay, if you have raised your hand, just so we don't think you're still raising your hand for a question, go ahead and put it down. Okay, great. So a lot of this hopefully will be familiar. So I'll probably move with all deliberate speed here through the first part of the workshop, and then we can get down to the nitty-gritty. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to notice is that there are three main areas of the page when you first open up a course. And one of the things that may be a little jarring is that, the menus are in different places. For example, what is referred to as the navigation bar is no longer, for those of you familiar with original, is no longer on the left-hand side. It is no longer something that you can edit and add your own items to. And they've also sort of whittled it down. So you'll see that the navigation bar is letter A on our screen here, and it is organized more like tabs than a sort of sidebar as you might be familiar with. But it's been whittled down to being the items that you would use on a most regular basis. Another thing that's important to notice is that these are items that will be available to students as well as faculty. And even though the resulting screens, when you select these tabs, may look a little bit different and the faculty will have a little more control, a good example of this would be the gradebook. You might be familiar with that there was a screen called My Grades, and then there was a grade center, and never, the students would never see the grade center. And a lot of times I find when I'm teaching an asynchronous course, I don't go into the My Grades area very much. But now there will be a grade book and everybody will know where it is. And when it's time to go look at grades, you go to the grade book and the student will see what the student sees, and you will have the control that you would normally have. And so that's one major change that I think is really going to streamline things. So we have the navigation bar at the top. On the left-hand side, letter B, in our depiction here, is the details and actions menu. This is something that is also going to be present for students when they log into the course. However, there will be obviously some controls and some options that will be there for faculty that will not be there for students. For example, they will not have the option to swap out a course image, nor would you want them to have that ability. But on the other hand, in the books and tools menu, if there is an e-textbook that is connected to the course, you will find it there and they will find it there. So there's a tremendous, I think, streamlining of the whole interface, and you'll notice that it looks a lot cleaner and there will be many fewer selections. I call them selections because people are now using touchscreen devices, so it's no longer clicks, but there is no longer so many of these selections in order for you to get to where you need to go. So I find that to be very positive. So letter C on our tour is the content area. And this is where the course content that you create or deliver will be, and the students will also find it there. And the interface for both students and faculty, again, will also look very similar. So I like the consistency, and I like the fact that you don't necessarily have a completely different view. Once we demo the course, we'll be spending some time in student view, and you'll get to see how it does change, but how it's also has a sort of fundamental consistency. Okay, any questions on the Ultra interface? All right, let's move on. Okay, so another thing that you will notice in the Ultra interface is the presence of icons. A lot of Blackboard Original would have large text-driven menus where you might have a drop-down menu with 20 different choices on it. When I looked, I think at one point on the I wanted to build some content in an original course, and I think I counted that when you hit build content, there was something like 44 text-driven choices. So they've definitely sort of cleaned that interface up, and you'll notice that that things are they still do have a textual element, but they also have a visual element. So if you get used to these icons and what they mean, it'll be a lot easier sort of visually to find your way around. And the same thing goes for students. Another thing that you'll notice is what I refer to as behaviors. So sometimes you will see menus that pop up, you will see panels that slide in from the right, and you will see, as in this example, that folders now expand when you click on them, and they also, if you click them a second time, they will collapse. So here we have a Getting Started course information folder, and you can see how that works as it expands and collapses. So we're going to see this in a lot more detail when we get to the demo portion of the workshop. So here's an example of a panel sliding in from the right. Now this was a behavior that, if you're familiar with original, you saw quite a bit of, but they definitely brought it on steroids here in the Ultra version. It is definitely something that you're going to see as layers, as things layer on top of each other as you go further into a selection. And so that is helpful because it allows you to see sort of where you are from a navigational perspective in the course. So here, what you're seeing here is the procedure to create an item in the content area of the course. So you'll see there's this little plus button, and you click on it, and it provides a pop-up menu, and you hit the create button, and then this menu will slide in. So there are many other situations where you will hit a setting or an option and something will slide in from the right, but this particular example is the create item menu. Okay, so any questions about that before we move on? Okay, I would imagine that a lot of this is somewhat familiar, seeing as some of you have had a chance to look at some of your dev shells, so that's great. Now, a lot of you are familiar with the fact that on the left-hand navigation bar in original, there were some items that every course sort of had as a default. There was an area for faculty information, for example. There was an area for the course entry quiz, for example. Now, a lot of that is changing because, first of all, there's no menu to edit on the left-hand side anymore. And second of all, some of these items are just not going to be placed as, in the same way as a template. So now what you're going to see when you're receiving the course is you will see a course entry quiz as the first item at the top. I have a visual of it here, but we'll see it in a little more detail when we get into my demo shell, which I've tried to set up as close to the Epic template as possible. So given that all of these structural changes have happened for the Ultra interface, the Epic standards have also changed. So it's really important to know that when you receive your course, you will have the CEQ at the top, but then you will also have you'll have to create, instead of having it already sort of be there, a kind of a getting started / course information folder. And that will include items such as faculty information, the course syllabus, the learning outcomes, maybe a sort of high-level course calendar, although there is a calendar feature in Ultra as well, which other workshops will cover in more detail. But these are kinds of things that you might present at the top of the course, so that you have to sort of create a place for the students to get started, as opposed to it already having a place where you would sort of fill it. So you actually have to go ahead and create that folder as part of the Epic standards.
Jamie,
yes.
This is Mary. I was just going to add, in addition to this course entry quiz, that the course materials for the Eagle Advantage will also be populated for them. So that's the 2 items that will be populated automatically.
Right. And will that be accessible at the top of the course, Mary, or is it going to be in the books and tools?
Yes.
It will be at the top of the course. Okay. That's good information. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so of course, whether you use folders or modules or whatever type of content items that you wish to place below these initial items are up to you, and we'll get into a little bit more what you would like, what options are available. And another thing I want to mention is if you would like to put an additional sort of course resources folder, that's something that I've seen some professors also do, an additional resources folder that may not be necessary for getting started. So that is also an option that you can create, but it's not an EPIC standard per se. Okay, so now let's actually get into the demonstration. So I'm going to stop our presentation here and stop sharing for just a brief second, and we're going to share a different monitor. And let's go in here and let's see. There we are. Okay. I'm going to move that out of frame. Look at it here. Okay, everybody should see my Ultra course view development, ultra.dev.js per now. And so as we mentioned, there is, I did put a sample of a CEQ there just to sort of simulate what it would look like. And then this is my getting started course information folder. And so in here, I created sort of a document item, and you'll see that the document item has like a welcome video, a course description, learning outcomes, faculty information, et cetera, So all the things that I had mentioned. And so one of the things that I did want to impress upon you, in the past, you might have created a generic thing in original that we referred to as an item. And it had some ability to put some variety of elements in it, but this document tool is a lot more flexible, and it provides you with a lot more items that you can potentially add to it. So what I would like to show you next is I'm going to jump into this lesson 1 learning module that I created. And I just want to show you some of the things that are possible with documents. So for example, at the beginning of this lesson, I might have put a document that has an overview and tasks, and I can, there isn't anything added to this, but it's sort of just there. But I might have this item, and then here's an example where I've added videos several different ways. So this first embedded video is from YouTube, and I just wanted to let you know what that looks like when you place it in here. Also, if you've already created something and you want to edit it, you can hit these 3 dots. And now I'm going to edit this YouTube video, and check out this really cool feature. This is actually very new. I can take this YouTube video, and just by dragging the corner of the thumbnail image, I can actually make it bigger, or I can make it a little smaller. And that's a level of control that we did not have previously. So it's pretty neat. Another thing for accessibility, oftentimes, it's been EPIC standard that we would provide transcripts with our videos. When you do an attachment in a document, for example, if I were to add an attachment to this document, I can hit the attachment button, and it will give me an option, it's loading slowly, to add a document. And so that's what I had done down here. And you have the choice whether you want to make a document downloadable, just viewable, or downloadable and viewable. In this particular transcript, I made it downloadable and viewable. So I want to show you what that looks like, because they actually have sort of a document player in Blackboard Ultra that allows you to expand the document. And this is a power that the students have not had before, because if you sort of zoom in here a little bit, this is the transcript for this video. And now as I play the video, I can watch along and sort of read along the transcript as I am watching the video. So it is very powerful new feature that I'm really happy about. So this next video is a video that I input from Yuja. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like. So here's a document item in which I've added text, a video, and attached a document. And I've been able to format the video in different ways. So all of that can be input into one document. And if I'm going to the next item here, let me show you some other things that you can embed in a document. You can embed links. You can embed, here's a soft chalk that's been embedded. And then here's a soft chalk where it is a link. So the embed is really nice because, of course, you can control it right there on the page. And if you have other things that you want to say about that content before and after, it's right there in line. But sometimes the downside with this is that it does present a kind of a smaller window when it's embedded. So if you still want to use soft chalk and you still want to embed things, they will open in a new tab. And so if you click on that, you'll see that the interface for soft chalk is much bigger when you do it that way. So you do have some options there. This next example is some H5P that I embedded in here. So that's also an interactive tool. In this case, it's called a hotspot image, which I was able to put right there in amongst other text on my my document. And so other things that I've attached, here's a PDF that I attached, and that's what that looks like. These are the EPIC standards, in fact. And then I also implanted a, embedded a PowerPoint. So now students can scroll through the PowerPoint, and it's right there in line. It's also downloadable, just like the other document options are. So the point being that documents are super flexible and allow you to do a lot of different things within a single document. So that's really cool. So let me see, are there any questions about that? All right. The next thing I want to cover is let's just talk a little bit about building some content now that we have some items already available to us. And I'm going to go through these items from a student perspective in a few minutes. But what I'd like to do right now is just cover how we would add some content and the variety of ways in which we can do that. So, and I'm going to touch on this fairly lightly, but if you have a more specific question, this is designed to be, a resource for you. So don't hesitate if you have something that, a burning question that you really want to look into. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about adding a document, for example. So what I'm going to do there is you'll notice that as I roll over and hover in between each item, I have this purple line and I have a purple little plus button. And now you'll notice that these lines are available if you are in a folder. This is a folder. Remember how I said that there's these behaviors where you expand a folder and collapse a folder. You can do the same with a learning module. Here's how you open a learning module and you close it. And you'll notice that there are these rather subtle gray lines. So if I wanted to place something inside a folder, I will open it up and I can scroll down to any spot within the folder, and then I can click on the plus button, and then I have options. I can copy content from another course, I can create, I can upload a document or a photo or whatever. I can import something from cloud storage, and I can also use the content market. So for right now, I'm just going to create a document. So I'm going to hit create, and then I'm going to choose document. The first thing I'm going to do is give the document a title. There it goes. And then I can choose any number of kinds of items to add to this document. So if I hit add content, it will bring up a text box. If I hit add HTML, if I have something that I want to embed and I've copied the embed code, this will allow us to paste some HTML code right in. If I want to upload some item from the computer, I hit upload from computer, and then I have item from cloud storage, or I can browse my content collection. You'll notice also that the default when you create something new, and whether it's a assessment or a document or some type of content, the default used to be that things oftentimes were visible, but they've taken great steps to make sure that the default is now hidden from students. So you have several places from which you can change this. You can change it from here, or you can change it after you finish creating. So for now, I'm just going to open up a text box, and I'm just going to add sample content. Now, even within a text box, by the way, you can also add some cool stuff. Like if I want to add an image, maybe I can go over here to pictures and just grab an image. Let's see, I'm just going to drag it from a different screen, so you're not going to see where it's coming from, but this is what it's looking like when I drag it in here. So then I hit next and next. Now you'll notice that accessibility is built right in. So if I am putting in a file, I have a choice to change the name of the file and then also the alternative text. And I can also just choose to mark an item as decorative, which is what I'm going to do at this time. I also, when I'm adding a file, I can choose to make it either viewable and download, view only, or download only. So right now I'm going to choose view only. And there it is. So I'm going to hit save. And now the sample content is in there. And I'm going to close the document. So now I've created this document, and you'll notice it's here, and it is hidden from students, but I have the option, if I hover long enough, to change the visibility here. I also want you to notice how this icon has a slash through it. Once again, this iconography is very important in terms of the status of various things. When you're in the grade book, you might see things that have different colors that indicate status. You might have things where there's a check mark next to something, and that might indicate its status. And here you're seeing the visibility, and it's indicated by that slash. So I want you to be sure that you're not only looking out for icons, but you're also looking out for any status markers that may also accompany a particular icon. So be on the lookout for that. So now I was able to change the visibility from within the document, but I can also do it from right here on the content page, and I can make it visible. Okay, so that is how you make a document. But let's do a couple other things real quickly. Let's look at creating an assessment. So under assessments, I have a choice to do forms, which you can use to make surveys. You can do an assignment, and you can do a test. Now, previously, these were very different kinds of items, but there's a lot of similarity among the different assessment types. For example, something that I don't recall that you were able to do in the original. If I'm creating an assignment and I have a quiz question that's in a, maybe a question bank or a pool, and I just want to make that part of an actual just homework assignment, you have the ability to do that, and it'll be automatically graded in the exact same way that it would be on a test. So in this example, I've just got to go through very briefly and just create like a really quick sample test with a couple of questions from a question bank that I've already imported into the this course. So I'm going to go test. And just like with the assignment, the first thing I'm going to do is give the test a name. What is that? Hold on. Oop. Did I stop sharing? Okay, hold on a moment. Let me get back. Here we go. Sorry about that. Once again, you'll notice that the default is that it's hidden from students. Can everyone see that again now? Mary, can we see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so you have test settings that are available on the right side. And so that's everything from the number of points, what category you're going to assign the test to, the due date, the number of attempts allowed. And these are sort of your most common settings. But if you really want to drill down, there are more settings available. And again, as I was saying, when you start to get into settings, you'll see these panels slide in from the right. And these are some of the settings that were present before, but also you've got a little bit more detail available to you. So, but right now, I'm just going to add some content to the test from the middle. Now, you'll notice that the same button and the same behavior that you used to add like a document, you have that same plus button here. And when you hover over it, it turns purple just like previously. So you click on it, but it's going to give you a whole different set of options because, of course, you're here editing the test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, I'm going to try, let's reuse questions. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a true and false and a multiple choice question from the pool that I had there. And I'm going to hit copy questions, and it's going to place those two questions right in there automatically. And then I am going to leave all those other settings alone for now. And then I'm going to make this item visible. And all I have to do at that point is just close it. And you'll notice that it's ready to be taken. So it's that simple to create this information. So, okay, so where are the pools and where are they found? Well, you can go over to right here, question banks. And that's an item that's on the left, and it's never not there. So as long as you're logged in with your faculty access, you'll notice the question bank tool is there, and any question banks that you have imported will be there. So that's where I drew those two questions from. So any questions on how to do that?
I have one question. If you had imported a test from an old course shell that was already complete and you wanted to use that exact same test, would you have to go through a recreating it, or could you just kind of use that same test?
Well, if you are drawing from a specific pool, well, there are several approaches. Actually, that's actually a wonderful question to ask just at this moment in my presentation, because what I was going to do is I was going to talk about copying content in, and there's a lot more flexibility in how to do that than previously. But what I will say is the infrastructure of connecting something to a pool may or may not necessarily copy over unless the pool is also coming with. So what I have gotten in the practice of doing as I've been playing around with my Ultra Dev shell is I like to grab the pool and then if necessary, build the test because the procedure, as you can see, is very simple in terms of actually building the test. And you don't have to go through that extra step of deployment where you used to have to do. For me, what I would do is make sure all my pools were intact and imported, and then maybe rebuild the test. However, if you do a course copy, it would be worth your time to sort of see if how the infrastructure, like the status of whether it's pulling from that particular question bank. We call it question banks now. We used to call them pools in the old model, but you know them as pools. And so you just have to make sure that if that test item is there and it's present, what is it drawing from? So that's something I would look at. Another thing that you have available to you, of course, is your student preview. So you can sort of see what it looks like to students too, and that'll be the ultimate judge of how well it's working. But let's talk about copying content first. What do you think? Does that sound like a good approach? I think that's our best next thing to do. Okay, so if I'm adding course content, we've talked about adding documents. We've talked about adding, a test, for example. But what if we want to copy something in from somewhere else? So if we hit the plus button, we have an option to copy content. In the past, you used to have to take an item from your old course and sort of push it towards its destination. Now it's backwards. It's the other way around. You're going to start in your destination course and pull the information into the destination. So here I am in the destination course, and I'm going to find something from another course, and then I can, let's find a good example. Maybe I'll grab something from my old Epic Dev shell. Let's see, let's go into lessons. So I can take an entire folder, by the way. I could take the entire course, I could take just a folder, or I could take an item within the folder. In this case, I think I'm just going to take the whole folder. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to hit Start Copy. And you can do the same, John, with a question bank, referred to previously as a question pool. And you can also copy that, and then the landing spot for that will not be the course content here, it will be in the question bank. And I think, do you have to initiate that, maybe Mary or Emily, do you have to initiate that from the question bank menu? Do you have to do that from here, or can you do that from that copy content option? Do you know?
I do not. Emily, do you?
I'm sorry, what was the, are you talking about just
If I'm
adding
grabbing
content?
a question, Emily, if I'm grabbing a question bank, do I do it from the question bank menu, or do I do it from
You can do it from copy content, or you can go to the question bank and you can import from a file. I know there's a question on the chat about like pulling from vendors and importing, so you can do it there as well.
Right.
But most of the time I would use the copy content option.
Yeah. Now, you'll notice that some things that come over from original do have some exceptions. And so whenever something is not copying cleanly, you will get an alert, and it will look like this. So if I hit View Exceptions, it will give me a report of what are some problems with the copy. So in this particular test that I brought over, there were some exceptions. So there are some things that I obviously have to review here to make sure that the content came over properly. So you may also discover that if you import something, that it may not be completely what you were looking for. So if that infrastructure ends up not being I don't want to use the word broken exactly, but if it's not connecting, then you might have to, instead of bringing the whole test over, you might want to bring the question bank over. And you can also do that the way that it was done previously, where you download it as a zip file, and then you can still import it over here in the question banks area, where you can, let me see, you can hit the plus button here, whoops, and then import from file. So that is an alternative on how to do that. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to bring items into our course, or how to either that or how to create course content, I want to talk a little bit about, let's go down here to the items that were here previously. So if I want to build items, I have to think about how I want to structure things. Now, one of the things that we used to be able to do is be able to have layers of folders. So there would be, say, a folder inside of a folder inside of another folder, and that was something that was available to us. That is no longer the case. There are only 2 layers of folders available. So, for example, if I have this lesson 2 folder, I can add, if I hit this plus button and hit create, I have an option to add a folder. But if I tried to put a folder inside this folder that I'm creating now, I would not be able to do it. It wouldn't let me. So that's something to recognize. So you may have to rethink how you want to deploy your content, given that that's the case. So another tool that you can use to organize content is the learning module. Now, there are several differences between learning modules and folders. But first, before we talk about those differences, let me just go over very briefly how to create either one. So I'm going to hit this plus button and hit create. And you'll notice that in the top 2 options in the content items are learning module and folder. So let's create a learning module. We're going to give it a title. So let's call it, let's see, we already have a module 1 and 2. So let's do module 3 in this case. We're going to make it visible. We can, at this point, add a description. So, one of the things with a learning module that you can do is you can choose to have it deploy as a forced sequence. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Another thing that you have as available to you in creating a learning module is that you can add an image. So I'm going to add an image just like I did previously. We're going to access that same sample image that I had before. And we're going to put it in there. And now I've created a module. Now, you notice that it's popping up here at the top, but I may want to go down here and place it in order, which all I have to do is drag and drop. Okay. So that's creating a learning module. And of course, you have an option to have that image and a description show up for the students. So that's how you create a folder or a learning module. So now I want to talk a little bit about the differences between these items. And let's see here. I think I'm going to actually get rid of some of this stuff that I just added because it's sort of cluttering up my whole view here. I want to use this opportunity as I'm deleting things to mention it's very easy to delete things. I'm going over here to the ellipsis button and I'm hitting more options and I have a choice to edit something. I can look at whether students have accessed it previously or I can delete it. So it's very easy to delete something that you may have worked very hard on, and you will get the delete learning module pop up here. But you may find that, and I've certainly done this just in trying to move too quickly, I've deleted things that I've worked hard on. So just be very careful when choosing this button and don't just grab things willy-nilly. Okay, so what I'm going to do to really sort of display the difference between using a folder for organizing your course and using a learning module, I just want to show you what the differences are from a student perspective. So I'm going to hop into Student Preview. Student Preview is still in the same location that it was before, but I think you're going to find that it's a much more robust looking Student Preview. And it's a lot easier to distinguish when you're in the Student Preview versus when you're not, at least to my eye. So I'm going to hit the Student Preview. I'm going to start Student Preview. And it'll take a moment to load. Okay, so just as we had here previously, we have some folders. We have we have the CEQ. We have our getting started information. And when I'm looking at a folder, you'll notice that there's a little dot to the left, and it's going to be an indicator as to whether you've accessed it or not. And this is an indicator that the faculty can see with the student progress option, but that a student can see as they're going through the course. And it's something that will be preserved so that if they leave the course and come back, it will still be there. So if I go into the Getting Started folder and let's say I access this document and then I back out of it, you'll notice that not only does it show me that I've started that folder, it also shows me what in the folder have I started. So it's pretty neat. It's a pretty neat little indicator.
Hey, so just real quick, sorry. So
Yeah.
when you say you've started, does it indicate you've opened something, or if there's an active assignment that needs to be graded, does it say it's been completed?
I don't know that it's going to necessarily give you completion from a student perspective. I'm not sure.
Yes.
In this folder, you don't have
Will it?
graded stuff, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
so Kevin, if you have an assignment, for example, and the student completes it, they're going to get an indication showing it's submitted. Same thing with a quiz. So yes, it's going to give that indication with, I believe it's a green dot.
oh, cool, awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
For that document, can you select the indicator to tell yourself that you finished reading it, not just that you accessed it? Can you click that, is what I'm asking, I guess.
Well, in the
I
past,
mean, the little dot.
yeah, I don't know that it's, I guess, yeah, it's got a
Okay,
mark
so
as
you
complete.
could mark that as complete. If it's
Right.
just something that you're reading,
Right.
then a student could do that. That was something I noticed recently.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the check mark probably is also the same iconography as when you've taken a test and you've submitted it,
Yep.
For example. Okay, so one of the things that you're going to notice with a folder, though, is that this is what I would refer to maybe as the cafeteria or buffet option. And so if it doesn't necessarily matter the order in which this student completes items, then a folder is a perfectly acceptable option for organizing some things. But I do know that a lot of concepts that you would teach pedagogically might have a sort of progressive relationship to them where, for example, I know a lot of math concepts sort of build upon what you just learned is the next, in order to introduce the next concept, you have to be familiar with the previous. So one of the things that's a big advantage with a learning module is that it's going to give you that sort of forced sequence piece of it is going to show you things only in the order that you choose as an instructor. So here is a module that I put together. It will demonstrate this, I think, very nicely. So as we saw, when you open up a folder, you'll see this expansion behavior like we saw before. You'll see the same thing in a learning module, but you'll also see a start button. So the student will have the option to start, and then it's going to load a screen, which will sort of, for lack of a better term, might be a module player, so to speak. And you'll find that it has sort of an interface that may remind you, if you've used SoftChalk before, of that kind of thing where there's some navigation ability. So let me show you what that looks like. We click on Start, and now you'll notice that we have these navigation buttons. When I get to the next item, you'll not only have a right arrow, but you'll have a right and a left arrow over here. So this is blank, so there would be something here normally, but I haven't added any content to this document yet. The next thing is you'll see, this is a page that we've looked at before, but you'll now notice that there is a back button and a forward button. So I can continue to move forward through the item, okay? Now, I'm going to back out of this for a moment for you to see a couple of things. First of all, you can see that there's now this progress indicator that I've completed some of these things, but not others. And that I'm not going to be able to access the discussion board in the test until I've done these other things. Okay, so I'm going to hop back in where I left off, but I want you to notice something. When you have a lesson module, you can put a folder in a module. As I indicated right here, you can put a folder in a module. Now, it does not work the other way around, which is a message that I put down here. You can't put a module within a folder, but you can put a folder within a module. Now, the question you might ask is, okay, so what does that look like to the student? So this folder has two items in it. I put a document and I added a link. So let me show you what this looks like to the student. So now I'm going to go back to this sample 2 page and I'm going to move forward. But you'll notice, where is it moving forward? I'm not seeing something that tells me I've entered a folder per se, but I will go to the top item in the folder, and that will be the next thing in my lesson module player that it will play. And then the next thing I'm going to go to is this link, which of course I can open. Okay, and it opens in a new page. So, and then after I've done all these things, I'm now jumping back out of the folder into the base level of the module, learning module, to continue my progress. And so now this is what a discussion board looks like. And then once I complete the discussion board, now you'll notice I want to go forward to the test, but it's not letting me. Why? Because I have not responded to the discussion. Okay. I hit respond and respond. And now that I've done a response, the test is now available to me. So this is what a test will look like when the student is getting ready to take it. So you'll notice that it doesn't occupy the entire screen, but simply the little panel here on the right. And then it will be very obvious that I'm starting an attempt when I start an attempt. And when I click on this, then you will see the question here. And I take the question and hit submit. And it will say, are you really sure you want to submit the test? And you say submit. So no one can tell you as a student, I didn't see that, I submitted the test or not, or whatever. You will get not only this, but you will get this confirmation number. So this can be a good thing for students to click a quick picture of, or maybe copy and paste it somewhere so that it can be looked up later. Or you can also download it so that they have a record of having completed something, which can resolve a lot of disputes that may occur. So, so there you go. So any questions about that or anything else over our last 6 minutes together?
Hey, so I'm sure I'm going to forget half of this stuff when I get ready to use it. The video, is it downloadable?
The video for today?
Yeah.
We'll be placing it on our YouTube channel.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be available. And also, I want to encourage folks, we're doing open lab time. We had one yesterday. We're going to have another one on both North and South Campus today from 2 to 4. And then also tomorrow, Wednesday, from 2 to 4. And there also is our regular drop-in lab times throughout the semester on North and on South, and then by appointment at the RTP campus. So that's something I highly encourage because I agree that you will definitely learn this more by doing probably than by having someone just yammer on about it for an hour. That's certainly how I best learned. So, okay, Kimberly?
It looks like it's a lot easier to move things around and organize things in Ultra than it was in old Blackboard.
Right.
So given that, would it be better for a faculty member to have an old course imported into an Ultra dev shell and clean it up on the Ultra side rather than spending a lot of time cleaning it up on the old Blackboard side?
I would say yes and no. One thing I would try to eliminate prior to a changeover, and we actually have a checklist. There's more than just what I'm telling you, but the major thing I would do is to get rid of any third level of folders because either things won't copy or they'll copy alongside of level 2, and that'll give you a little bit of an organizational headache. So I would say as long as you could sort of reorganize things to the point where they're not several levels deep, then that would be my recommendation. Mary, I think you have some other things to add.
Yeah, I wanted to just clarify that. So when you do that method where you clean it up and then have it moved over, keep in mind that the first level for the folder is going to be occupied by the menu name. So lessons would occupy a level. And then each lesson, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3 would occupy that second level. So really you're reducing the levels that you can really have because once you get it over, you're going to want to move it out of. So Kimberly, we have a document for telling you what to do if you want to follow that method where you clean it up and then have it converted to Ultra and then play around with it. But what faculty feedback has been from a lot of faculty we talk to is they'd rather start with a blank shell and then use the create and copy content option to move things over where they want them. They found that that was easier because like Jamie said, if you have things too deep, one of two things will happen. It will either move everything up to the second level, which is fine. Then you can move it around, no big deal. So you can try that. But in a few instances, we have found that it truncated content and started leaving things out. So that becomes a little more, I guess, tedious to manage. So you can certainly have ITS do something for you. And if you don't like it, then request a blank shell and start over.
And Emily puts in the chat here, I recommend to start with a blank course. And if you want to copy content, only a few folders or modules at a time and then move them around little by little. Sounds like it will take more time, but it actually does take less time.
Can you copy a folder from old Blackboard into an Ultra shell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I also just put in a chat a link to this page that I'm looking at right here, Blackboard Ultra Resources. If you go on the left side of this page where it says Documents, some of these documents that we've been referencing throughout the workshop, such as I think maybe the EPIC standards are over here, and then also the checklist that we were talking about preparing. Yeah, here are the EPIC standards, and then faculty steps for Blackboard Ultra, which is the checklist I think that we mentioned. And so here it is. Okay, so all of that information is there in the documents section of the website over there. So I recommend you guys check it out. if you
And-
are curious about
And
that.
and I was going to say, if you forget about the link, if you're not a member of the LSID faculty support team in Microsoft Teams, you can join that. And it's a tab at the top of the Blackboard Ultra channel as well. That same page that Jamie just showed.
Yeah.
And John's got a question.
Yeah, I was just wasn't familiar with your YouTube channel to access these videos. How would I get to that?
It's called, here, let me.
John, I believe let me double check. I think we've got that posted in that same team. Let me double check that. If we don't, I can add that really quickly.
This is rather weird.
I just posted both the team and the YouTube channel in the chat if anyone needs a quick reference.
So when you get there, it's going to look like this. So it's e-learning support and instructional design. YouTube.com / WTCC EdTech is another way to look at it.
Thank you.
All right. Also, it's important to note that not only do we have just videos there, but within the videos, there are certain playlists for topics. So for example, one that you might want to look at is the faculty crosswalk for Blackboard Ultra, because that's sort of, for those who are familiar with Original, that's a series of videos that we put together that tell you what's different. And, you know, a lot of the things that we went over today, it'll sort of give you a review or refresh. So we actually do have a lot more time. We have until 12:30. So anybody that wants to sort of the webinar is a little more freeform from this point onward. That's pretty much all that I wanted to communicate today. But I'm more than happy to hang out and answer whatever questions I can. Don't be shy, because your question might be someone else's.
Is it
Katie?
still possible to put in a course link
Yes.
like it was in Classic? Where is that?
Okay, so
I think I heard that you can't do that if you're forcing sequential.
I think that may be correct.
But I'm
That
not
is
sure.
true. That is
Okay.
true.
Because like what I used to do is in my getting started area, I would put a course link to the course entry. And then I would also link to it inside my first learning module. Or not in my first, I guess it'll change, because in lessons I would put it too.
All right, so if I'm here and I want to go, I want to create a link, I can hit just create just right there on the page. And there's a link option, but the link option, in some places, it gives you the option between a web link to a web page and then the course link. And then you can choose a keyword for an assignment. Like, I've got several things called sample in this course that I can try to look up. Or I can choose a document. And then here, let's clear the search criteria, but just look at documents and then search. And here's all the documents. And I can pick one.
Thanks. I just didn't see that tab. I saw web link, but not the tab.
Now the tab is not available everywhere. So the same restriction that I think you were talking about does exist. So for example, if I'm adding something here and I hit create and I hit link, it does still give me the course link option. Okay, good. So that is available in the place that you would want it, I think.
And I'll clarify, Katie, when we discovered this issue, it doesn't stop you, if I remember correctly, and Emily, if I get it wrong, correct me. It allows you to create that course link, but in some instances, it will not work when the students are navigating through. So you definitely would want to, if you use it, test it.
And then Emily was saying course links are restricted in when you do the force sequencing. So if you're using a learning module, even despite that restriction, I still want to just put in a plug for, I really think if you use learning modules with various items embedded, such as multimedia videos, H5P content, soft chalk content, I've found that just works really well and provides the students with a very complete experience. And, you know, having the force sequence option, there's such a thing as release conditions, which is similar to adaptive release, if you remember the term. And that's still available in the new version, but the force sequence sort of takes that out of you having to worry about each item being restricted in a certain way. So I just find that it works tremendously well with very little effort to have something that's very clean for students. And also in this world at which a lot of information is flung at your face, it forces a sort of, let's focus on what the thing is that you're doing right now, as opposed to having to jump into some page and then back. You know, it just allows you to look at what you're looking at and then go to the next thing.
Hey, Jamie, hey, I had a quick question. So the for the learning modules, the force sequence, that's optional, right? Is that correct?
Repeat that. Is what optional?
The force sequence for the module.
Yes, force sequence. So I'm going to create a module real quick just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to create a new learning module, and you'll notice that halfway down there is this force sequence box, and I can choose to not do the force sequence. So if I save it without that, then I have a new learning module. And let's jump in student preview real quick. And it's going to look pretty similar to the other experience. Of course, I don't have anything in here, but it's now going to allow you to go back and forth from the beginning, and there won't be any restrictions what direction you go. I guess I didn't really need to jump into student preview to show you that, but I needed to do it to think it. So anyway, we do have some more questions here in the chat. And Emily was also mentioning there's a link. There are some sample courses, and there's a video that shows you how to log in so that you can view those sample courses. Okay, some other courses that came in is, do we have any examples of how Ultra integrates with Microsoft Teams? And to the best of my knowledge, that's coming, but it isn't here yet. Is that correct, Mary?
So there is the capability. However, because of the way that we create teams, that process would have to change. And so ITS is not enabling it at this time because it would interfere with the way that Teams courses are generated. I don't know if we will make that decision to make a process change in the future, but right now it's not possible.
Now, there is an option within your course to create groups. So if you're looking to sort of segment content in that way, you know, there's options there. So
Jamie, can you share and show people how to join the ILSID faculty support team, or would you like for me to do that?
Let me stop sharing, and you want to do it real quick. You probably have a more fluid.
Yeah. So when you go into Teams and click on the Teams area, there is the choice to join or create a team. If you do join team, you can join with, oops, where is the code? Look again. Join team, and over here it is with the code. And this code T1CLDX7, which I pasted in the chat. and you can click Add Team. It will send a request to us for you to join the LSID faculty support team. And I just wanted to show you really quickly, when you come in there, there's a general channel. I've got our YouTube at the top, user videos we've created, etc. But there's also a Blackboard Ultra channel that has those resources that Jamie was talking about, as well as crosswalk and files, everything that we have created for that.
And of course, you can ask questions there too. If you have a burning question, go ahead and post it.
Yep, and looks like I'm having a internet issue where it's not automatically loading that, but here's when it opens in the browser, that's that same page Jamie showed. So there's just a wealth of information there, and you'll notice that in that team site, if I go back to post, that faculty are also using it as a communication method to ask questions, and it gets you a fairly quick response. So I encourage everyone, if you have not already joined that team, to do so and use that, because I think it's been very helpful for most faculty.
Yeah. So going back to the chat. So if you copy a module to Ultra, will it still be a module? I give you a qualified yes on that, with some exceptions. Remember how I copied some of that content over in the example I showed earlier, and there were some exceptions that came up. So what I would do is I would try to copy the content in and see how it goes. One example of something that might not work is if there are multiple folder levels or something like that. They may not work exactly. Also, if you have some partner content, that it might be connected in a way that is sort of not the latest protocol. So there are some reasons why a learning module may or may not work. But in essence, it will be a learning module, and the interface, as I've demonstrated, will be much cleaner. There isn't this whole table of contents hanging out on the left side that's sort of hard to sort of navigate. So it'll be the new and improved version, and I would say that with a little bit of cleanup, maybe here and there, it'll come over pretty nicely. Let's see. Okay, so so Emily says if you're using third-party content like Connect or Cengage, SimNet, per guidance from Blackboard and third-party publishers, it's best to create new links, then reuse. And yeah, that's I agree wholeheartedly. So any other questions? I know there's a lot here. We could go on talking for days, and we have. But there is a lot here, and it's a lot to digest. And I do appreciate your time and your diligence in trying to understand this and get to use it, because I think the more you use it, the more you're going to appreciate. Just like with any software, it's not without its little quirks and bugs and things a little here and there. But I think you're going to find it's just a much cleaner experience for you and a cleaner experience for your students. So are there any other questions? Some folks are moving on to other things, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm glad that you were able to take what you could from this, and we're going to continue to be a resource to you going forward. So please feel free to reach out if you have any additional items or questions that you would like to reach out to LSID. Don't forget that our direct email is bbhelpdesk@waketech.edu or lsid@waketech.edu, and you can reach out to us anytime.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Katie. Thanks for your help.
I feel like every time I sit through one of these things, I find something new.
Cool.
How can we access the recording?
We're going to eventually put these on our YouTube channel. If you look back in the chat a little bit, there's some information on how to link to the team for faculty support, and on there's a tab for the YouTube channel.
Okie dokie, thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I put in chat earlier when you talk about open labs from 2 to 4, is that virtual or is it a physical location where somebody can go in and seek assistance?
Those are set up to be more in-person type delivery. And it's a lab, it's a computer lab. So we have, I think it's NH230 and SD15 are the rooms. And please stop in and drop in.
Okay, she said NH230 and SD, what's the number?
15.
15? Okay.
Yeah, NH230 is right, isn't that right, Emily?
Yes. Yep.
And yeah, so those are the spaces, and they're both computer labs, and they'll be. We've tried to have at least one e-learning tech and then one instructional designer present for each of these sessions, so that can be helpful depending on, what sort of help you are seeking.
I'm just trying to make sure I get the information out to our faculty, because we're in our particular division, we're having to cover for open positions. So they may not be able to attend these sessions at this time. So I want to make sure I get the information out where they can get assistance.
Okay, let me drop this in the chat as well. Hang on, I'm opening up a Word document. This will be, we have a schedule, as I mentioned, referenced for this week. That's going to be 2 to 4 on North and South tomorrow, this afternoon and Wednesday. But going forward, and I think this is going to go all the way through the summer, more or less. We may tweak the schedule a little bit in the summer hours, but basically this is our schedule at least through the end of, or mid-May. And it may adjust slightly, but that's so starting next week, these times will be available.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any further questions?
What was that address to? We could send questions to?
BB Help Desk. So Blackboard stands for Blackboard Help Desk. Or you can also do, if it's easier to remember, lsid@waketech.edu. Yep. Emily put it in the chat.
Okay.
Now, is there also a call-in option?
You can always call the help desk at 919-866-7000, but you will have to indicate that this is a Blackboard related call, and you have to navigate through the menus and be transferred, etc. So I like to recommend the option to go through email, or if you join the LSID faculty support, there's a chat option there too, and we monitor that chat as well.
Thank you. I've used the 7,000 before. I didn't know if there was a different number now, but it's still the option within the 7,000. Okay.
Correct. And those hours are 8 to 8 Monday through Thursday, and then 8 to 5 on Friday. So I'm going to still hang out here for as long as needed, but for now, I'm going to end the recording, if that's okay with everybody.